I hated all my life. I hated everybody. When I first grew up and can remember, I was dressed as a girl by my mother, and I stayed that way for 2 or 3 years. And after that, I was treated like what I call the dog of the family. I was beaten. I was made to do things that no human being would want to do. That quote was from Henry Lee Lucas. The quote came from a conversation that he had with an interviewer about his childhood. He would go into further detail about how his parents were incredibly abusive to him, and how that may have had an effect on his development as a child. And to be honest, that's not hard to believe. This monster, this nobody, a simple drifter, became possibly the most prolific necrophilic serial killer in U.S. history. Henry Lee Lucas was born in Blacksburg, Virginia, on August 23, 1936. His home life was more than terrible. Before he had even reached double digits, Henry was an alcoholic. This was the direct result of his father running an illegal moonshine operation behind his log cabin. And if that wasn't enough, Henry's mother was incredibly abusive. Her name was Vivian Dixon Lucas, and she worked as a prostitute. And because Henry was the youngest of his 9 siblings, he received a lot of verbal abuse from her. And when Henry was 8 years old, he was beaten by her on the head with a wooden plank so hard he would be left in a coma for 3 days. In between bouts of abuse, Henry's mother forced him to watch her have sex with her customers, and if she wasn't busy doing that, she was busy pimping him out. Henry's mother would force Henry to wear girls' clothing, and then she would pimp him out to the grown men and women who lived in Blacksburg, Virginia. Even school wasn't an escape for Henry's torment. He would go to school and consistently be bullied, so much so that he would incur an injury to his left eye. And the injury was severe. It needed treatment, but his parents didn't want to treat it. It was left to fester, and eventually he lost his left eye completely. In December of 1949, Lucas's alcoholic father, Anderson Lucas, died of hypothermia after drinking to intoxication and collapsing outside during a blizzard. Shortly thereafter, while in 6th grade, Lucas dropped out of school and ran away from home, drifting around Virginia. And this would become his character, his identity. He was a drifter. He was a nobody. And during his time drifting around the state of Virginia, he would commit over a dozen burglaries. This was around June 10th, 1954. Most of his crime at that time occurred in Richmond, Virginia, and this is how he sustained himself. He would rob and he would steal. Eventually, he would be convicted of these crimes and be sent to 4 years in prison for all of his burglaries. And in late 1959, right after he was released, he traveled to Tecumseh, Michigan to meet his half-sister and also visit his mother. During his time in prison, he had established a relationship with a woman via pen pal, and he intended to propose to her. This news wasn't received well by his mother, though. She insisted him on dropping this relationship and traveling back to Blacksburg, Virginia, where there he could find a woman that was more suitable. This devolved into an intense argument between Henry and his mother, and it culminated with his mother striking him over the head with a broom, to which he picked up a knife and stabbed her in the neck. This action would be Henry's first murder. He wouldn't get away with it though. Even though he did run out of the house quickly after he murdered his mom, the police found him. He was then quickly convicted and sentenced to 40 years in prison. But because the prison was overcrowded, he would only serve 10 of those 40 years. After being released, he went to Pennsylvania, where he worked at a mushroom farm and got married to someone named Betty Crawford, the widow of a cousin. In 1975, he was accused by his wife of molesting both of his daughters, and to escape these allegations and claims, he abandoned his family and returned to life as a drifter. During this time on the street, he began to murder more and more people, specifically women. Between the years of 1975 and 1976, there were a string of murders and sexual assaults that he committed while he was just out on the street living as a drifter. He would double down on these terrible acts by partnering up with a friend that he made in prison named Otis Toole. From 1979 to 1981, Lucas and Toole worked together at a roofing company. There's also some evidence to suggest that their friendship wasn't just a friendship, that they were also in a homosexual relationship. And during this time living together and working together, they allegedly killed and ate 108 people. Otis Toole's MO was to crucify his victims and after hours of suffering, quickly kill them and then barbecue them. Lucas, on many occasions, went on record saying that he didn't like the cannibalism part, not because he didn't want to eat humans, but because he didn't like barbecue sauce. During this 2-year killing spree, Lucas would strike up a relationship with his 10-year-old niece named Becky. He and Becky would then run off to Texas to live together. This is when Lucas would pick up odd jobs to support him and Becky's lifestyle. He eventually got a job with a woman named Kate Rich. She was an elderly woman, 82 years old, and he was expected to be her live-in help, but Lucas just decided not to work and would eventually be fired. At this point, Becky was getting tired of being with Henry. At this point, she was 15 years old, and she was homesick for Florida. She wanted to live her own life, and this angered Henry, so much so that one day she just vanished. Many people in Bowie, Texas were asking about Henry's wife, and he would always give a generic answer saying that she just had left him or gone back to Florida. When in reality, on August 24th, 1982, he drove Becky to a field in Denton, Texas, and killed her. He then dismembered her body and scattered pieces of her across a nearby field. Unfortunately, 3 weeks later, on September 16th, Henry decided to kill his previous employer, Kate Rich. He convinced her to come with him on a search to find Becky, with the intentions of getting her alone to kill her. And once he did, he shoved her body into a drainage pipe. In June 1983, Lucas was arrested on charges of unlawful possession of a firearm by Texas Rangers. Later, he confessed to the murders of Powell and Rich and led the police to their purported remains. Although forensic evidence alone was inconclusive and the coroner stopped short of positively identifying either of them. For the next 4 years he'd be in jail, waiting for his trial, he would confess to hundreds of murders, but then quickly retract his confessions with no real justification. The number of confessions that he made grew to 3,000, making him the most prolific serial killer in American history. Many of these confessions were taken with a grain of salt, but he was convicted for 8 crimes, 3 confirmed murders and 8 disputed murders. He subsequently received the death sentence, but that was quickly changed to a life sentence. And on March 12, 2001, at 11 p.m., Henry Lee Lucas was found dead from heart failure. He died at the age of 64. Hello everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, let me know in the comments down below, and leave a like if you liked the video. If you want to recommend any other topics that you want me to cover, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm open to everything that you think would be interesting for this channel. And a big thank you to all those who have subscribed, and all those who have left a like and commented. You guys are great, you're establishing a community here, and it's greatly appreciated. And as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one.